Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I am your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 96 of Talking Blue. Today we're here to recap the Dodgers and the Braves. Not the best series. Started out great. Dodgers got a win Friday night to kick off the series, but then they drop the following two games to drop the series. As you see by the title of the video, we are here to recap all of that. Before we get into the games, I got a ton of injury/roster updates to get into because there was a ton of stuff that happened since we last spoke at the end of that Astros series on Thursdays. So as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the new videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. That is Instagram, that is TikTok, that is X. You can also follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X, tweet about the Dodgers, tweet about all things Major League Baseball, post a lot of breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, videos, info, analytics. Great follow if you're a baseball fan to keep updated and keep up to date with things that are going on around the league and with the Dodgers. Nick Talking Ball on X. So let's go ahead. Let's waste no time. Let's get into all this stuff. So again, before we get into the games, ton of injury stuff. Okay, so the last time we talked, I should say, we know that Tyler Glasnow left his start Thursday with the back strain. Back tightness, back strain, whatever you want to call it. I told you guys with that, with some of the decisions that were looming, I had a feeling the Dodgers would probably IL him. Maybe not probably, but I had a feeling that was a possibility because it kind of just kicks the can further down the line in terms of making a decision between Sheehan, Robleski, Sasaki, one of those guys going down to the bullpen, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of surprising things. So the first thing, Blake Snell, instead of making what was supposed to be his last rehab start Saturday, they activate him to pitch Saturday against the Braves. So that's great. We get to see Blake Snell. I love watching Blake Snell. But obviously at the same time, that means we're losing Tyler Glasnow. So he gets placed on the IL. Snell comes up. So they obviously just basically switch positions. Snell is now part of the rotation. So no Robleski, no Sasaki, nobody has to go down, bullpen, anything like that. They just switch turns. It doesn't look like, Glasnow is like too injured or anything like that. It obviously is the back issue, but this is one of those to me, one of those classic Dodger injury finagling situations where they're like, hey, Glasnow is very injury prone. We can, have him rest for 2 weeks, basically having him come back at the very end of May, whatever, and then, we can figure out some stuff at that point. Maybe there's another injury. I told you guys that baseball is a funny way of working itself out where they had to make a decision with Snell coming back. Oh, Glasnow has back spasm. Let's IL him, and we'll kick that decision further down. Kick that can further down the line. So we get Snell, we lose Glasnow, so that is exciting. The next thing, Mookie Betts. He had his 2 rehab games over the weekend, Friday, Saturday. That was actually quicker than I anticipated. He will be activated Monday, tomorrow, against the Giants. So there we go. Mookie Betts is finally going to make his way back. So that is also another great thing. Now we go back to the negatives. Brock Stewart, who was just called back, or I should say recalled, I think Wednesday last week in Houston. He goes back on the IL. He aggravated a burn spur while covering first base. That was like I said, his second outing, which came against the Braves on Friday. So he's expected to miss at least 3 weeks. So positive like Glasnow, it is not an elbow, not an arm injury. But Brock Stewart, my God, that guy just cannot stay healthy. And so similar to last year where the Dodgers acquired him from the Twins. He had already had injury issues. I think he was currently on the IL, so he didn't come to the Dodgers and make his debut right away. I could be wrong with that. He only made a couple of outings and literally went on the IL like 2 weeks after acquiring him and never saw him again. Same thing here. He finally comes off the IL, pitches 2 innings. He pitched 1 inning against the Astros, 1 inning against the Braves. Looked pretty good. Goes back on the IL immediately. So that's pretty much it on the injury updates. Last guy, Kike Hernandez, he was also down in Oklahoma City with Mookie Betts. He is still on pace to be back at late May, which, basically once she's eligible, once the 60-day IL expires, he is eligible to return May 24th. So a couple weeks from now. That is pretty much all the updates we have. So a lot of great stuff, like I said, and we'll get into that later at the end of the pod. But Mookie Betts coming back, Snell is going to rejoin the roster, and we'll kind of get some updates on Glasnow over the next couple weeks. I imagine it won't be a big deal for him. So let's go ahead and get into Game 1 of this series, the best game that we got to see as a Dodger fan. All right, Emmett Sheehan is taking the mound against Chris Sale, one of the best pitchers in the sport. If you want a good breakdown about Chris Sale and his career, you can go to my Baseball Mondays podcast that I do, where I talk things all baseball. Last week I did a nice breakdown about Chris Sale and his Hall of Fame candidacy. His he has a great chance to get into the Hall of Fame. I broke that down. If you're interested, if you're a Braves fan, a baseball fan, whatever, White Sox, Red Sox fan, Chris Sale fan, so you can go to Baseball Mondays to read about that. But let's go ahead, get into Game 1 of this series, Friday night. The Braves get on the board first with an RBI single from Austin Riley. Second inning, Kyle Tucker, he stays hot after playing pretty well in that Houston series. He doubles into the right field corner to tie the game at 1. Fifth inning, Shohei Ohtani, he hits a sharp single into right field to put the Dodgers on top. Now they lead 2-1. Sixth inning, a little bit of an insurance run. Freddie Freeman hits his first home run in about a month. A solo shot to dead center. This was off of Chris Sale, his 4th home run of the year, to make it 3-1. And that would be the final score. The Dodgers would take Game 1 of the series by a final score of 3-1. Emmett Sheehan only went 4 2/3, which is kind of rare with this Dodgers rotation. Everybody's going deep into games. So 4 2/3, which for some teams is actually a decent start. The Dodgers, that is kind of unexpected, but 4 2/3, 1/3 of an inning for Vesia, Kyle Hurt 1, Will Klein 1, Brock Stewart 1, and then Tanner Scott 1. He got the save in this game, and we'll talk about the bullpen. But let's start with Emmett Sheehan. All right, it was definitely a bounce back for Sheehan and a pretty solid start overall. All right, let me give you his final line. He goes 4 2/3, 6 hits, which is a little much, but 6 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk. He did have 7 strikeouts in the game. All right, now Sheehan definitely has continued the fluctuation of velocity, kind of similar to what happened with Roki Sasaki a year ago. It's not as up and down. Sheehan basically is going to sit 94 to 95. You'll occasionally see 96, 97, but you'll also occasionally see 93, maybe even 92. So he did average 94.3 miles an hour in this game, which is around basically what he's been at all year. But if you do go to inning by inning, he was sitting 96 in the first inning, but then there were other innings where he was sitting more 93. So for whatever reason, it's been very difficult for him to maintain the velocity, 95, 96 throughout the entirety of a start. It does kind of dip down to that 93 range. But again, I said positives and negatives. One of the positives with Sheehan, one, he brought the whiffs. He's continued to get the whiffs and the strikeouts. All right, that's not really been an issue for Sheehan all year. All right, he has a whiff rate of 31.3%. That is in the 88th percentile, and he has a K rate of 28.3%, so nearly a 30% K rate. He also hasn't been walking a lot of hitters as well, so that's pretty good. And the biggest positive for me when it comes to Sheehan with this start was what happened with his four-seam fastball. I documented it a week ago when the Dodgers beat who did they play last weekend? I'm blanking on that right now. Anyways, the Cardinals. When Sheehan struggled against the Cardinals, all the numbers about how poor his four-seam fastball has been this year and how it's been hit around. And really, it's been the one reason for Sheehan's struggles, because if you dig into a lot of his numbers, they're very similar to what they were a year ago. Some of them are, even in the areas where Sheehan's also always kind of struggled, there were even slight improvements like ground ball rate, barrel rate, hard hit rate. The one thing that he really had been missing is the numbers against his four-seam fastball. His four-seam was getting crushed. Well, he did not get a hit or give up any damage on his four-seam fastball in this game. All right, none of those 6 hits came against his four-seam fastball, so that's very good. All right, he had 8 whiffs on the four-seam fastball in this game. All right, 8 of his 14 whiffs came against the four-seam fastball. So the four-seam fastball was looking good. He averaged 18 inches of induced vertical break, so Sheehan's got some pretty good movement on that four-seam fastball. He spins it pretty well. That's what he averages on the year, so nothing different there, but for whatever reason, Sheehan was able to generate a little bit more whiffs on the four-seam fastball, and it overall was much better. Because of that, the four-seamer no longer looks like one of the worst pitches in the game. If you go and look at run value and the negative, who's down at the bottom in terms of run value, you don't see Emmett Sheehan's fastball right away, so that's a good thing. His batting average against on his four-seam fastball is a little bit lower now, 341, and I know that still sounds very bad, which it is, but the expected batting average is 311. Okay, so there's a little bit of unluckiness there, a little bit of inflammation, and for a lot of the year, it's been like well over 400. So looking much better. The slider still under 200 with a 41% whiff rate. The changeup does have a batting average against of 297 and the curveball 333. So his slider is doing the heavy lifting right now for Sheehan. That is also probably one of the things that I haven't mentioned or really needed to do a deeper dive in, is that everything outside of the four-seamer, the changeup and the curveball haven't been great as well. The slider is his out pitch, his best pitch, the pitch that he's going to rely on to get outs right now. If the four-seam can continue to get in a much better place, we're going to continue to see Emmett get into a much better place. The ERA is 4.79. Like I said, Sheehan is still getting the whiffs and the strikeouts. All right, so he also he has greatly improved the walk rate from 2025. He had a 7.6% walk rate last year. Right now it's at 6.6. So he has dropped that down a little bit. He has the 7th best chase rate in Major League Baseball. He's the 10th best whiff rate, and he has the 20th best K rate. All right, so he is getting whiffs and strikeouts, and he also gets a lot of chase. That's thanks to his nice changeup and slider combo. The slider gets a lot of chase, the changeup as well. All right, so it's a step in the right direction. Especially with, like I said, the biggest issues of the four-seam fastball. So pleased start from Emmett Sheehan. I want to continue to see him improve. Next week, I believe his next start will come again. It might be Thursday against the Giants, but it also could be against the Angels next Friday. We'll see. Not sure. So that's pretty much it for this game. The three big left-handed hitters the Dodgers have, besides Max Muncy, got it done in this game. Kyle Tucker, the game-tying RBI double, left on left. You like to see that off of Chris Sale, because I documented a week ago as well that Tucker has struggled mightily against lefties this year, which is usually not something that he's never dealt with in his career. So he gets the double off of one of the better left-handed hitters in the game. Shohei Ohtani, he hits that RBI single. Nice hit with runners in scoring position. I'm going to get into Shohei's struggles a little bit at the end of the podcast. And then Freddie Freeman, he hit his first home run in a little bit, also off of Chris Sale. So that is some good stuff. The offense did enough in this game. Definitely wasn't an outstanding showing. But you know what? When you go into a game facing a guy like Chris Sale, you know that, you don't have to, your expectations shouldn't be to drop an 8 spot on Chris Sale's head. You got to grind out at bats, try to get do your best to do 3, 4, get 3, 4, 5 runs in this game. Hopefully your pitching can keep the opposing lineup at bay and you're able to win a close scoring game. That's exactly what they were able to do. Before we finish game 1, I just want to shout out the bullpen, because Emmett Sheehan, who didn't go super deep into the game, obviously came out after 4 2/3. Bullpen covered 4 1/3 innings pitched, no earned runs, 2 walks allowed, 4 strikeouts. And I wanted to talk about Tanner Scott really quickly before we get to Game 2. I want to give him some credit because he's looked very good early on in 2026. And it's very early. But again, I just want to give him credit because, Edwin Diaz did go down. And right now, he is not the, closer. He's not labeled as the closer. But, the Dodgers are going to give him a chance to get some saves. He got the save in this game. And, a year ago, he was one of the bigger talking points in a negative way about the Dodgers. How much he struggled. Whenever a closer struggles for a team, it's always like a lot of the blame goes on you. And he was the new guy who got the big contract. And we know all year he was getting made fun of. I'm sure his confidence dipped. He really struggled. And there were a lot of reasons why he struggled. I'm going to get into those right now. And, the question I have is Tanner Scott back? And I wanted to dig into why has he improved and what has he done a little bit differently. So he's got an ERA sub 2, which is nice. He has a 1.65 ERA on the year. All right. So he has by far the highest chase rate in Major League Baseball right now. So he gets more chase than any pitcher, starting pitcher or reliever in Major League Baseball. All right, that is mostly credited to his nasty slider that he has right now, but he also obviously throws, he's a 2-pitch pitcher, four-seam fastball and a traditional bullet slider. That's all he throws. And most of the chase comes from that slider, but also, he is going to get some chase on the four-seam fastball. So he's got the 5th lowest walk rate in Major League Baseball. That's pretty crazy, especially because a year ago, Scott did clean up a lot of his walk issues that he's had in his career. He's actually improved even more. Last year, he had a 7.2% walk rate, which I believe was the lowest of his career. Right now, it is even lower than that. He has, I think it's a 2.3% walk rate, so he's improved the command even more, which is kind of crazy. All right, so he's got the 8th best slider in Major League Baseball in terms of run value, and it's 7th in batting average against. So his slider is one of the biggest reasons right now while he's been more effective. So what has been different? All right, the slider has been part of that, like I said. So in 2025, he had a batting average against on his four-seam fastball of 245, and the slider was 267. So the pitches weren't getting crushed, but it shows that they were by no means dominant or like super effective. Right now in 2026, the four-seam fastball batting average 160. All right, so almost 100 points lower in batting average. The slider 129, well over 100 points in batting average, almost 150 points. So those two pitches are not giving up the same amount of hits and damage that they were a year ago. He's increased the whiff rate on his four-seam fastball, 22.6 in 2025, 31.3. So a 10% increase in whiff rate on the four-seam fastball. That is massive. When you're a guy who's a two-pitch pitcher, you're going to rely on both pitches pretty evenly. You're getting whiffs on the four-seam fastball. Obviously, that's a pitch that you're going to kind of set up the slider. In Scott's case, you increase the whiff rate on that. That is going to increase your production. So that's huge. The whiff rate on the fastball is in a pretty good spot now, and it's jumped, obviously, like I said, 22.6 to 31.3. That's a big jump. All right, now, his hard hit rate overall is down from 42% to 30%. Big jump right there. Like I said, his walk rate is down from 7.2% to 3.4%. So that's a big jump, and especially for a guy who you thought last year did as good as he can when it comes to limiting walks. All right, another thing. This is a very slight thing, so I don't think it's a huge part of his increased production, but he's dropped his arm slot a little bit. So he was 35 degrees last year. It's down to 33 degrees. So he's lowered that arm slot a lot, or not a lot, but he's lowered the arm slot a little bit this year. Gone back to what he was previously in 2023 when he was with the Marlins. So I found that interesting. I wonder if that is a conscious effort that he's, something that he's done on purpose. I would imagine that it probably is. You see a lot of guys now. I talked about Shohei the other day lowering his arm slot. There's a lot of guys in Major League Baseball who are lowering their arm slot. It's kind of becoming a trend where I think a lot of metrics and like biomechanics and stuff like that are kind of explaining that it's kind of easier to like throw harder and kind of like you can increase your velocity a little bit easier when you lower your arm slot. It kind of helps keep your body more in sync, and it's like a lot of those metrics, like I said, in biomechanics are kind of finding that it's easier to throw harder and increase your velocity when you actually lower your arm slot, and there are actually health benefits to it. So I always find that stuff interesting, and those are things that I'm kind of diving into a little bit more as of late. So his arm angle has slightly decreased. All right, one of the biggest things that are most notable to me is what he's doing against left-handed hitters. All right, so obviously as a left-handed pitcher, you got to dominate left-handed hitters, or you at the very least got to be good against them. All right, so in 2025, he had a 621 opponent slugging percentage against left-handed hitters. So left-handed hitters crushed him. Right now in 2026, a 182 slugging percentage. So he's dominating, giving up no slug to left-handed hitters. I believe he's only given up one home run on the year, and that was to Dansby Swanson of the Cubs, who is a right-handed hitter. So another thing before I close up on Swanson, if you take a look at his heat map, all right, if you go over to Baseball Savant, kind of look at where is he giving up hits in the strike zone. 2025, all right, you look all over the zone. This is from the catcher's perspective, okay? He was getting crushed right in the heart of the plate, so in down the middle and in to a right-handed hitter, 296. Right down the middle, 296. In and down the middle to a left-handed hitter, 286. Down in the zone, right down the middle, which was something very common with him last year. He wasn't able to get that same chase on the slider that he's getting right now. Right down the middle, but in the down part quadrant of the strike zone, 333 batting average against. Up and away to a lefty, up and into a right-handed hitter, a 400 batting average against. All right? You take a look at 2026. The only pitch in the zone that is hitting hitters are successful, the only part of the zone, up and into a right-handed hitter, 400 batting average against. But everywhere else, up and down the middle, a 0 batting average. Up and away to a righty, 0. In and down the middle to a right-handed hitter, 0. All right, right down the middle, hitters are hitting 250. In and down the middle to a lefty, 0. Down in the zone, 167, 111, 100. So he is doing much better at limiting hits and, just dominating in the strike zone a little bit more. So those are all interesting things and things that I like to see from Tanner Scott. And another thing, his meatball percentage. This is something I skipped over. Meatball percentage, obviously, pitches right down the middle. All right, though that has dipped 10%, 7.6% meatball rate last year. Right now it's at 6.5. So he's just throwing less pitches in the heart of the strike zone, which was an issue for him last year. All right, he has seemed to figure out a more consistent arm slot, or I should say release point. I wonder if whenever you're leaving pitches down the middle, you're obviously having your release point is not where you want it to be, and you're letting the pitch go and it ends up right down the middle. I would imagine that maybe the decreased arm slot is maybe a reason to why he is maybe to get a little bit more better command, live more, down to get chased with the slider, get the fastball up and stuff like that. So overall, he looks much better than he did a year ago, and he is turning into a real weapon out of the Dodgers bullpen. So I really like what I've seen from Scott. Let's go to game 2. All right, like I said, the surprising info that came out before this game was Blake Snell is coming off the IL to make his first start of the year. He's going up against Spencer Strider of the Braves. All right, formerly really dominant pitcher. He's dealt with some injuries last couple years, and hasn't been as effective and hasn't been as healthy. But let's go to that game. All right, Braves get on the board in the top of the first. There was a ton of infield hits, bloop hits. Braves actually had the bases loaded at one point with no outs. Snell was able to get a strikeout of Matt Olson. Almost got out of it with a double play, but Austin Riley beats it out. Hae-Sung Kim kind of made a little bit of a not so great throw that was able to allow a run. So 1-0 Braves. In the second inning, this is where the Braves put up some runs. A 2-run single from Ozzie Albies makes it 3-0. Matt Olson also hits a single to make it 5-0. So the Dodgers put this game out of reach a little early. Michael Harris would make it a 6-0 game. Drake Baldwin later in the 8th inning makes it 7-0. Dodgers would get on the board in the 9th inning thanks to a 2-run shot from Andy Paz, his 9th of the year, to make it 7-2. But the Dodgers lose a stinker. All right, Blake Snell for 3, Jack Dreyer for 1.1, Edgardo Henriquez for 1.2. Then we have Paul Gervasi, who came up as when Glasnow went down. He was up. He actually pitched 3 innings in this game and was able to keep the pen a little bit relaxed and didn't have to use the pen so much. So the Dodgers lose. Let's get into Snell. This game sucked, but Snell's final line obviously doesn't look great, and obviously, he gets the loss, and he has an ERA of 12, and he only went 3 innings, and it doesn't look great. But when you dig into some stuff, it was not a horrible start. 3 innings pitched, 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. All right, so let me start off on the rip, and let me say this. I am not worried about Blake Snell one iota. I am not concerned, anything like that. He looked fine to me in this game. I would even damn near say he looked good. He got blooped to death and soft contacted to death. All right, if you watch this game, there was a couple infield hits, a couple of bloopers. Now, when they did put some runs together in that second inning, Ozzie Albies, Matt Olson, those were some pretty hard hit balls. But a lot of the damage that Snell had, or a lot of the base runners and the traffic that he had, was really due to a lot of some, soft contact. If you go ahead and look at the average exit velocity, on Blake Snell's four-seam fastball was 75 miles an hour. All right, his curveball 67, his changeup 89. The one pitch that got hit hard a little bit was his slider, which he only threw 15 of those. The average exit velocity was 101. So his four-seam fastball gave up an average exit velocity of 75 miles an hour, and he threw 42% heaters in this game. All right, so I think truly he got a little bit soft contacted to death, a little Babbitt unlucky Babbitt batting average on balls in play, for those who might not know what that means. All right, now he looked like the very old Blake Snell. He had 16 whiffs. So in 3 innings pitched, he had 16 whiffs. He brought the strikeouts and the swing and miss, which he always has had. The velocity was actually up from where it was a tick a year ago. He averaged 95.1 in 2026. It was at 95.9 in this game, basically averaging 96 miles an hour. That's great. That shows that he's healthy. That shows that the shoulder's fine. He actually looked really good to me. I know that some people will be like, what are you talking about? He gave up 5 earned runs. I actually think that the stuff looked good. If you actually watched his curveball in this game, his curveball looked explosive. He got a couple of ugly swings and misses on his curveball. The velocity was good. He wasn't like all over the place with his command. He knows he's going to have the good changeup. The slider, even though it got hit hard, that looked pretty good against some left-handed hitters. I'm actually very excited, one, that Blake Snell is back, and I'm actually excited on the way the ball was coming out of his hand in that game. The results weren't great, but I do think that, I saw the number on X. I don't know what it was, but like his ERA and his expected FIP is like crazy different. Expected FIP is based on the quality of contact. Again, he was not giving up a ton of hard contact. So Snell is fine. I'm not worried about him at all. I'm actually super excited to see him going forward. Blake Snell was a guy that really grew on me. Not grew on me, I should say, but I've always been a fan of him before he came to the Dodgers last year. I loved watching him pitch in Tampa, even in, when he was with the Padres, when he would pitch against the Dodgers. He would just always dominate the Dodgers. I really always loved him. He was just a big-time strikeout pitcher, but I really learned a lot about him his first year with the Dodgers last year. He doesn't get enough credit for how good of a true pitcher he is, like how good he is at adding and subtracting. He found he found something with his changeup last year, so I really think that this helped and added to this kind of thing that I'm talking about. But, he was so good last year down the stretch, August, September, and then eventually into the postseason. If you watched him pitch, man, he was so good at adding and subtracting, like I said, forcing fastball top of the zone. He dominates that inner part to a right-handed hitter as a left-handed pitcher. Fastball into righties, then he's going to use the changeup a ton to right-handed hitters. He'll throw the sliders to some lefties, which is nasty. The curveball, he'll throw to both-handedness. Like, he's a true pitcher out there who, when he's locked in with his command, even though he will allow some walks, he'll pitch backwards, he'll pitch traditionally, he'll get a lot of chase, he'll get a ton of swing and miss. He's got the electric stuff on top of having, like, the great mind out there. Like, he really knows how to pitch, and he's a fun, like, if you're not a Dodgers fan, or if you like just watching great pitching, he's one of those guys that is so fun to watch because he never gives in on the mound. That's something I really like about him. Like, if it's a 2-0 count, it's the first pitch of the at bat. He's not just going to lay in a fastball in there to get ahead. He'll drop a changeup on you. He'll drop a slider on you. Like, he's a true pitcher. He's really fun to watch. So not worried about him at all. Excited to see him going forward. His next start will come against the Angels next week in Anaheim. So before we get to game 3, all right, Dodgers got absolutely carved up by Spencer Strider in this game, who just came off the IL as well a couple weeks ago, and he hadn't looked good previously, but he looked great in this start against the Dodgers. I want to give you his final line, give him some credit. 6 innings pitched, he only allowed 1 hit against the Dodgers, no earned runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. All right, Spencer Strider was racking up the strikeouts and the whiffs, 15 whiffs in the game. His fastball slider combo looked nasty. All right, the fastball velocity was up for him, where he previously averaged 95.5. It was up to 96.4 in this game. If you watched him pitch, there was a lot of 96s, 97s. He was throwing hard. The slider, which has always been or always was his traditional out pitch, that pitch looked great in this game. His curveball's even nasty and has a lot of break to it too. So, the Dodgers got absolutely carved up from him. Like I said, 8 Ks, 15 whiffs, and Dodgers had no answers for him. And once Braves were able to get some runs off of Snell, the game was put to bed, and this was a boring game that I feel like I only watched 3 innings of it. So that's it. Let's go ahead and get to the final game of this series. Game 3, Justin Robleski taking on Bryce Elder of the Atlanta Braves. In the top of the 2nd inning, Eli White hits a single. This is off of Justin Robleski to make it 1-0. Later on, this was the big swing early on in the game. Mauricio Dubon doubles down the left field line to make it 4-0 Braves. This all came with 2 outs with after a walk to the 9-hitter from Justin Robleski, and then a botched double play ball. It was a comebacker to Robleski, threw the ball to second, almost threw the ball away. Alex Freeland was able to save the error and get the out at second, but it should have been an inning-ending double play, which would have kept it at a 1-0 game going into the second inning. Instead, it's a 4-0 game. Dodgers just had no answers for Bryce Elder. Later on in the 8th inning, a solo shot from Drake Baldwin and a home run from Matt Olson. Max Muncy sprinkled in a home run there to make it 5-2. Matt Olson makes it 6-2. Jorge Mateo makes it 7-2, and the Braves win. Dodgers drop 2 stinkers the final 2 games to lose the series. Both losses came by a 7-2 defeat. Dodgers get carved up by Spencer Strider and Bryce Elder. And credit to Bryce Elder because he's been one of the best pitchers in the game. Early on this year, he's got an ERA of 1.81 now. But I'm going to get into the what he did in this game. Justin Robleski, shout out to Robleski, man, because he's not only is he just a dog and he's been off to a great start this year, and even though he gave up 7 earned runs, he has a 2.42 ERA. That just shows how good he was early on in the first month plus of the year. He also went out there and 8 2/3 of this game. He almost pitched a complete game. 8 2/3, gave up 7 earned runs. He threw a ton of pitches, saved the bullpen. I would imagine part of that, especially with what Paul, I always forget his last name, Garvasi or whatever, the guy who came up for Glasnow, the reason he ate three innings on Saturday and then Robleski almost goes a full 9 is because the Dodgers are about to play 4 straight against the Giants and then 3 more in Anaheim. So they got a long streak of games coming up, so you need a fully rested bullpen. So those guys were some warriors. Obviously, Robleski at some point was going to regress to the norm. He was not going to maintain the stuff that he was doing. It's actually ironic because he did have more swing and miss and strikeouts than he has at any point this year. So he had, let me give you Robleski's final lines. So like I said, if I would have told you today that he goes 8 2/3 innings pitched, you probably would have said, hey, the Dodgers got out of here with a series win. Not the case, though. He goes 8 2/3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 7 earned runs, 1 walk. He did have 7 strikeouts. He also had 14 whiffs. He normally is much lower than that, or at least he has been this year. So his four-seam fastball, which has been a very electric pitch for him early on, his four-seam fastball still has actually been one of the best pitches in baseball this year. He got 8 whiffs on that pitch in this game, so the strikeouts and the whiffs were there for Robleski, but ironically, all the other stuff wasn't, and he gave up 7 earned runs. The Braves are a good team, and they got a good offense, so not really much to say about Robleski. He continues to be a dog. He has earned the chance and the right to stay in this rotation. We'll see if he gets that in a couple weeks when Glasnow comes back and all that, so that's pretty much it with Robleski, and, like I said, the offense, once again, just weren't able to do anything. The thing that really sucks about this game is that Bryce Elder, who had been off to a great start, so it's not surprising that he didn't do anything, put up any runs against him. But what's a little bit more concerning is that they did strike out and whiff a lot against a guy who doesn't get a ton of whiffs and strikeouts. He's more of a soft contact king, keep the ball on the ground, limit hard hit balls, that kind of stuff, sinker ball, changeup guy. He got 15 whiffs in this game. He generated 15 whiffs and 8 strikeouts. All right, and he's not a big strikeout whiff guy, so I don't like that. Now, the Dodgers haven't been striking out and whiffing a ton this year, so it's okay. Maybe they just weren't seeing the ball great, day game, whatever. Maybe Bryce Elder's got some funkiness to him, but I don't like that they swing and miss 15 times against a guy who doesn't get a lot of whiffs. That's not great. The offense just didn't do anything. And it leads me into my last topic about this podcast and everything. We're going to talk about Shohei Ohtani and his struggles at the plate. Not going to do a crazy deep dive because I think Shohei is going to be fine ultimately, but his OPS is now down below 800. All right, he only has 6 home runs on the year, which is not a lot. He's normally at this point of the year, he has around 10 or more. All right, I mean, Aaron Judge right now leads Major League Baseball with 16. And I'm not saying that he needs to be Aaron Judge, but Aaron Judge has 10 more home runs than Shohei Ohtani. And I know I talked about my last podcast. Maybe it's time to start to expect a little bit less with Shohei because of what we know. What he's doing on the mound has been great, but he is the leadoff hitter, and he is still the best player on the team, and he is still supposed to be the best hitter on the team. So, he is struggling right now. And, his struggles the last week have, previously it was Kyle Tucker, like for me. He was struggling. I was locked in on his at-bats to see him turn it around, and he has. After that RBI double in Game 1 of this series, he didn't do anything else in this series, but He was really great last week, and I continue to think that he's going to continue to get better. Shohei is now the guy that's at the front of my mind. I'm watching all his at-bats. He's been striking out a little bit, and he's been chasing. Again, I'm going to get into his numbers right now. Not a full deep dive. Again, it's not like the title of this video, as you can see, because I think he's going to be fine, and I think, it's still early May, and I think it's a little foolish to panic about a 4-time MVP. I see a lot of people on Twitter who are like complaining about him, and I get it. Superstar player, you got to live up to it, and he's got to be better. But I'm not gonna like come out here and break him down and what is he, blah blah blah, why is all this happening. But I'm gonna give you some numbers right now about what is kind of popping out to me. So the first thing, my first diagnostics when it comes to Ohtani is what he's doing against four-seam fastballs. All right, so in 2025, he had a hard hit rate of 68.4% against four-seam fastballs. Right now in 2026, it's 48.3%. So a 20% decrease in hard hit rate against fastballs. All right, he's only hitting like 200 against four-seamers right now. I don't like that because he's always been a great fastball hitter who hits velocity well, crushes fastballs. He had a slugging percentage of .608 against four-seam fastballs a year ago. Right now it's .286. He's getting no slug against fastballs right now. Another thing that I found a little bit interesting is he being a little bit too patient in the strike zone right now. When you take a look at his zone swing percentage, so swinging at pitches in the strike zone, 2025 it was at 66.1%. Right now it is at 59.1%. All right, so a decrease at swinging at pitches in the strike zone. Now, meatball swing percentage, so swinging at pitches that are right down the middle. 76.1% 2025. Right now it's at 65.8. So that is a 10% decrease at swinging at pitches right down the middle. That's interesting. That popped off the page for me. His overall swing rate, 45% last year. It's at 42.7% right now. So overall, he is swinging the bat a little bit less, and he's not swinging at pitches in the strike zone as much as he normally does, and especially pitches right down the middle. Is he guessing wrong? Is he, is his approach not great right now? I'm not really sure what that's all about. Now, again, a lot of his like chase rates, swing and miss rates, strikeout rates are all very similar. He actually has his lowest whiff rate right now since 2019, so that's not the issue. He's still hitting the ball very hard. He's still walking. The thing that's missing right now is his slug. He's not slugging or hitting fastballs in general. And he's a little bit patient right now at pitches in the zone. So what I'm going to need from Shohei, he's got to improve his overall numbers against four-seam fastballs. All right. One of the few holes that he's had in his career is normally guys that are big and left-handed, you can pound them up and in. You see teams do that against Freddie Freeman a lot. That's the same thing with Shohei Ohtani, up and in. But he has always been a guy who's been able to handle the fastball well. Right now, he is not handling the fastball, and he's not slugging against the fastball at all right now. All right, so what we need from Shohei to improve, his numbers against four-seam fastballs, the slug, all right? And I need him to be a little bit more aggressive in the strike zone. All right, that swing rate, I don't need him to be chasing crazy and being crazy aggressive, but the numbers don't lie. He's a little bit more patient with pitches in the strike zone right now. And his meatball swing percentage, his percentage of pitches swung at that are right down the middle is down 10%. So that's my diagnostics. I think Ohtani will be fine. I am confident he's still going to hit 40 home runs. I wouldn't even put it past him to still hit 50 home runs, but at this point, the standards have been a little bit lower. I mean, we are almost, we're at May 10th right now, so we have played a fairly decent amount of games early on in 2026. But Shohei is going to be fine. If you ask me right now, he's still winning the damn MVP. He's still the best player in the sport. He is just, right now we're kind of in the middle of learning. Is this a little bit of a lesser offensive season from Shohei because of what he's doing on the mound right now? At the end of the day, it is still a lot to ask a guy, even of Shohei's caliber, even though he's in the prime of his career, in the best shape of his life, and he's done it multiple times. It's still a lot to ask of a guy to hit 45, 50 home runs and be the best pitcher in the National League. That's still a lot. So we're still kind of in the midst of feeling out like what is this offensive season from Shohei that we're gonna get, especially because he set the bar so high the last 2 years, hitting 50 plus home runs. So we're gonna figure it all out. I think that he's gonna get hot soon though. I wouldn't be shocked to see him hit a couple home runs this weekend in Anaheim, his former team. So that's all I have for you guys on this series overall. Look, it's a stinker when you go up against a good team like the Braves. You know, that's a team that you feel like is in your weight class for sure. I mean, right now they're better than the Dodgers. They have a better record. They're the best team in the game right now. But that's a team that you get up for. The Braves, that's a potential postseason matchup. To come out of there with two stinkers Saturday, Sunday, that's definitely disappointing. Got to get on track this week. Got to take advantage of a team like the Giants, who are not playing great right now. The Angels might have the worst record in the AL, so got to take advantage of a couple of these teams right now. So what to look forward to? Like I said, the Dodgers will play 4 games at home against the San Francisco Giants this week. Their longtime rival. Mookie Betts will be back. That is what I am most juiced up. I cannot wait to see Mookie Betts back in this lineup. Shohei, that's another thing that I'm looking forward to. I need to see the at-bats improve. I did this a week ago with Kyle Tucker, and it worked out for me. He performed much better throughout this week. I need to see the same thing with Ohtani. I want to see him pop a couple homers this week. I'd like to see a couple homers. All right. Hopefully Teoscar is ready to get going. He had a day off on Sunday. He has been struggling for a little bit right now. The numbers do not look great. Alex Call might start to see a little bit more plate appearance from Alex Call because Teoscar has been struggling. We know he doesn't play great defense, and Call plays good defense, has great plate discipline, and he has been fantastic whether he gets a start or he comes off the bench. So just something to keep an eye on. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with to get you a little excited, the season starts Monday. All right, Blake Snell is back. All right, the team's getting a little bit healthier, and Mookie Betts is back Monday. The season starts Monday. All right, this is where the Dodgers should be getting ready to turn it on right now. All right, you're going up against your rival, your longtime rival, the Dodgers' current rival. I still believe is the Padres, but you're going up against your longtime rival in LA. You're going to face your crosstown rival this weekend when it comes to the Los Angeles Angels, Shohei's former team. Mookie Betts is back. I'd like to see Kyle Tucker continue to play better. Pages and Muncy look hot right now. Will Smith, I want to see him continue to get better. Freddie Freeman. All right, the season starts Monday. This is where the Dodgers are going to get hot, and we're going to look back and say, man, ever since Mookie Betts rejoined the team, this team has gone on a heater. I believe it. Say it with me, Dodger fans. All right, so that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you miss any of these videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Talkin' Blue Pod. You can follow myself at at Nick Talkin' Ball on X. We will see you guys later this weekend to talk about the Dodgers and the Giants, as well as the Dodgers and the Angels. Have a good night, everybody.